My name is Jennifer Biwersi, and I'm one of the co-directors of Middle Ear Project that runs Music for Your Inbox series. And today we're going to have another one of our artist chats with visual artist Kate Gorman, who is one of our featured artists creating a piece of mail art called Colorblend Red, Green, Blue, which is actually a set of 3 pieces of mail art, which is very cool. So let me get her invited, and then we'll have a conversation.
Hi, welcome. So thanks for joining. And I was just introducing that you are one of our featured visual artists creating Colorblend, which is actually very cool because it's a series of 3 separate pieces of mail art that I'm just gonna show, and we'll dig in more to those.
Excellent.
And I love the way you describe your work, that you use language and color to experiment with the ways experiences are sensed and documented. And that's exactly what you're doing in these pieces, where you kind of use literal like language and color
Yeah.
to do exactly that. And I thought it might be a really good way to start to talk about, like, how did you get into exploring color, and not color as like oh, I use color in the pieces I
Mhm.
create, like almost every visual artist does, but
Right.
color as a as a idea and a medium to like confront and explore.
Well, I think it started out because I was actually afraid of color for a very long time. I the first artworks that I did were in grayscale. I think there was something about just the infinite choice that and all that pressure to like try and figure out this whole other dimension of being able to use color to say something. I think it seemed super overwhelming when I was first starting to dip my toes into thinking about visual ways of communicating the ideas that I had sort of rattling around in my head. And it was a very slow process of just sort of like confronting color and like making myself work with it and failing and not feeling great about it. And uh, I think part of the reason, though, that I was afraid of it was because I felt like there was like a lot there, like it was a really chewy place. I can remember having that kind of stoner conversation on a bus with somebody at some point about like, what if we all see colors differently, man? And that sort of blowing my mind, and then actually taking biology classes and realizing that that could literally be true, that every human being could, like, I could see a color and say, this is lime green. And other people could also call it lime green, but their experience of lime green might be entirely different. And then as soon as I started like getting into it more, not even just the optical and scientific side of it, but really thinking about like why certain colors evoked certain emotions in me, and then they could have a completely opposite or different, just wildly outside of the realm of what I thought that color could evoke for somebody. I was just like, okay, there's so much here to play with, and there's so much here to like dig around in and just see what it brings out. So that's sort of the general reason that it keeps bringing me back to it. But I think at this point, it's just really exciting. Like, there's always so much more to find out. And in every medium that I work with, you've got a whole new set of color rules and things to figure out. Each material has a different dimension. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember one of the things we talked about that I think could be fun to revisit here is print color. It's like a whole thing.
It's
And
a whole thing.
and you talked about, for example, you mentioned like having failures, and
Mhm.
I've done some work in the print world, and it is a daunting thing to move from something you've designed on your computer to print. Can you talk about
Yeah,
some of the things you were encountering there?
absolutely. Well, one of the ways that I sort of made my baby steps into color from doing grayscale was CMYK. Always helps to have a limited color palette when you're first trying to like figure out what you want to do with it. And so I was like, oh, this is great.
And for those who don't know, why
yeah.
CMYK?
CMYK, those are what printers use to create the infinite array of colors that you see in every printed magazine, newspapers in the past when they existed, and any sort of full color book. Every color can be made from a combination of those 4 colors or a subtraction of those colors.
Mm-hmm.
And also with CMYK, which is a little bit different than RGB, which is red, green, blue. CMYK is, an additive process where when you layer them, you get the colors. And RGB has to do with light. And so then that just brings in a whole other realm of like subtracting color. When all 3 of those colors are overlapped, they create white, the RGB. But I focused on CMYK because that was physical media, and I wanted to do that with printing.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so a little diversion. But when I was really getting into that, I realized that the things I was using digital drawing and sketching and that sort of thing, and would create an image in CMYK, and then I would print it out on my printer at home, and I would look at what I had done on the computer screen, and I would look at the printer, and I would be like, these are not the same color. It's not what I wanted. It doesn't have the same thing, right? And I spent like ages trying to tweak it to get it to look exactly the way that I saw it on the screen. And at some point, I just had to realize that CMYK was a bit magical because of its ability to morph and change while still retaining those like infinite color possibilities. And I think that was the thing that sort of solidified it for me as just a great playground, because the fact that it could look a certain way on the computer screen, it could look a certain way on my phone, it could look a different way when I was using like a jar of printer's ink versus the kind of printer ink that I have in the inkjet printer that I use. That just meant that it had like even more possibilities, and that so opening to that and not being so rigid about like, well, there just has to be one, right? No, it can be infinite in its permutations, and then that just made it even more exciting.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm for the first time kind of connecting this like way that language is so similar. Like you would, you assume a word means a thing, and when you say it, it means a thing. Similar to like when you're setting up a print thing, you're using a formula for the colors. It should be yellow. I have set it at yellow, and then when it actually emerges into the world and engages with people and experiences and different machinery and different all of it interventions, it's no longer this clear-cut situation anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that it, well, and it stumped me at first. It made it feel like, oh, I just don't understand it, or I wasn't doing it right. And, that can sometimes be generative, but a lot of times that's just feeling like a roadblock. As soon as you start thinking, oh, well, I can't do something, or I don't have the knowledge to do something, that can stop you from getting to really interact with it. And I don't know, I always hope that whatever I discover in something will keep me going and like move me further along into either a better understanding of it, or just being able to let it go, or let go my ideas of what it should be, or what I thought it should be when I was coming into it. if that makes sense. That was a little
Yeah.
rambly, but
No, it totally does. And actually, it leads to something else I was curious about, which is I feel like you as an artist have this kind of drive to explore all of the different combinations of something. Like you have a really
mm,
permutational, exhaustive way of exploring. I could really relate to that. Like and there's a way of of that kind of exploring that feels very like you're really digging to understand it by just looking at every single little corner or bit of it. I was wondering if you could speak to that because in a lot of the different mediums and a
mm.
lot of the different pieces you create, this kind of the different combinations really show up of exploring.
Yeah, I think it's partly because I wouldn't make something if I could already see it in my mind. I've heard other artists explain their process, and they're like, I have it inside my head, and I just have to get it out of there and out into the world. And I'm like, that's amazing, and I completely have no idea what that's like. I get an idea of what I think it might be like, but it's always a little hazy. And so I'm like, if I want to see this, if I want to actually know what it's going to do when it's out there in the world, I have to make it. And so I won't be satisfied with just one. It's like, okay, well, I can see how this works for this one combination, but well, like, okay, yeah, magenta and yellow. Sure, that one worked out. But wait a minute. What if I'm putting magenta with cyan?
Hmm.
I don't know. I better check. I better just go
Yeah.
ahead and do that process.
Oh, I love that. And uh I'm the in the head person. And so I love hearing
Ah,
this I need to do it to see what it'll be like. It's so exciting.
yeah,
Well, and I think that's a good time to bring back to specifically these three pieces. So this is Colorblend, red, green, blue, and it comes in three versions. And they say, I don't know, I can't remember what the video would do with reversing things. So
yeah.
this says green 30 green at 34 paces,
Yes.
and it's a combination of cyan and yellow, which for anyone CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, black.
Yeah.
And then we have this one, which says blue at 33 paces. And then we have a combination of magenta and yellow that says red at 38 paces. So there are three combinations of cyan, magenta, and yellow. I'm just gonna there
Mhm.
full screen.
Yeah.
Um, and they have this really beautiful kind of cross stitch hatching pattern to them,
Yeah.
a combination of X's and slashes. And so can you explain kind of what this is an interactive piece? Like they're
Yeah.
beautiful by themselves, but they require you to engage with them to experience them. So can you explain kind of how that works? I'll hold up. I think this one's easiest to
Absolutely.
read on camera. I'll
Yeah,
hold
I
up
think
this
so.
one.
That one's got the nicest, like
Contrast.
sharp contrast, for sure. Yeah. So I love a lot of conceptual art, and particularly art that has directions in it to give me a little bit of an experience. And so I was really excited about creating something that was both visually interesting to look at, but then also had the instructions embedded in its like visuality. Like uh, the sort of cross hatching and the sort of different shades that are in there are all to create that they help the blurriness. If I had just done a solid magenta and solid yellow, the effect would have taken a lot more steps, and maybe I wouldn't have made a big enough print within a postcard. So a lot of the sort of like more the paler line, it sort of alternates in between. Yeah, that's helpful. Like there's a darker place and a lighter place, so that you've got a little bit more opportunity for the length of a hallway to give you the opportunity to hit this experience. And basically the experience is this: you put it against a wall. Usually you could tape it, or if you have somebody that you want to that'll hold it up for you. If it's against a white wall, that's fine, but I bet it would be interesting against darker color walls. That might add another little wrinkle into the process. And I always walked backwards away from it so that I could count how many steps it would be, and so I could get the exact moment when my eyes could no longer register a difference between, in this case, the yellow text and the magenta background. Now, it doesn't like I think it would have worked really perfectly if I had just done an equal number of all the little dashes. But because I like to play with text and I liked the idea of embedding the instructions directly into the visual work, and so that doesn't need any like side explanation or something like that. That way you could sort of see the moment even a little bit better, because you could look, if I'm looking at this all the way down at the hallway, at the end of the hallway, 38 paces away from it, I would be able to check and see, it's like, okay, I know that this side is where it's mostly magenta, but this other side, now it looks red because it's all been blended together. It gave me a little visual check of my own. But what was really interesting is I asked my partner to check it out too and just be like, how accurate or how close are these paces going to even be for other people? And his distance vision is so much better than mine. He, like, our apartment is at the end of the hallway, so the hallway went all the way down to our apartment, and then he was all the way back into the farthest part of our apartment, still looking through the door, and he was like, oh, I can still read it. So I guess if people have really, really great vision, you might need a really long hallway to be able to get the effect. Or be outside, that's true. Yeah.
Well, I love that these red at 38 paces is like, it's both instructional, but it's also like autobiographical. Like, this is your experience embedded into it, and it might be different for everyone else, but it's like it's the instructions. Be about 38 paces away. You're going to see these colors merge from the magenta and yellow into a red. And so it kind of doubles down on what you were talking before too about this experience. Everyone's experience being different. Yeah, because the paces will be different for everyone.
They'll be different. And I hope that people don't feel like, oh no, that means I didn't do it right. No, that just means you got to know your eyes better. Like that was the little bit of information you got about your visual experience right then.
Yeah, and I'll note for people now, like this one is at 38 paces, and this one is at 34 paces. And this one is at 33 paces. So they were even the colors themselves changed the way this effect like lands, like when it kind of happens.
And I was surprised by the green being even slightly more, like taking slightly more paces than the cyan background with the magenta letters, because I would have thought that because of the yellow that would make everything just sort of blend a lot quicker. But it didn't for me. And so I would be fascinated to know if that actually ends up working for somebody, where the yellow sort of becomes more overwhelming and blends it a little sooner, or even for the blue, if it like that one. I was also surprised because I expected the magenta to be too contrasty, too sharp, and I would still be able to make it out. But it was the closest one. So.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. And this is not the first time you've experimented with this effect. You've also done it with other mediums, right?
Yeah. Although I think this turns out to be the most successful. I did when I was showing you the first tests that I had done with it. I had taken it's a little bit like embroidery thread, but a thicker version of embroidery thread, and done some hand weaving, making strips of the text that had sort of like the same ratio of background to color. But and I was making them very like thin and small, because I thought that that's what I would need to do to be able to have the color blend happen without like having to walk super, super far away. But that was really difficult because of the high density of each color bit. And so when with the postcard project, since I was able to change a little bit of value and sort of layer them a little bit, I was able to get the effect a lot quicker, even though these are much larger than the first like hand weaving things that I did.
Right. So I'm hearing some of the things that because you've really learned by permutating this process, you've learned that like the density of the color, the distribution of the color, the scale of the final product, all of these like are the things impacting the kind of the blend effect. Yeah, it's very cool.
Absolutely. You know, it's like at times you'll see certain artworks, you know, you could see like Lichtenstein where he's really focusing on the size of like the Ben-Day dots that are used to be able to create, you know, those sort of traditional sort of like comic looks where it's all the little dots and then you can overlay some of the dots with other colors, the CMYK, to be able to create whatever. And just by changing the size of the dot, creates the possibility of that color blending happening at either a close range or a farther away range. And so that was definitely some of the things that I was thinking about while I was trying to like spread it out.
Right.
Maybe just to give it a little bit of space, add a little bit, give it the possibility of adding a little bit of white to be able to make that blend happen.
Yeah, fascinating. And then I remember we had an early conversation and we were talking about, you know, there's just also there's so many uncontrollable elements like people's sensitivity to certain colors, you know, obviously there's kind of the more obvious like color blindness, but also I was sharing the story that my father had an eye injury and they had to replace one of his lenses. And so one of his eyes is more sensitive to blue than the other. And so all of these biology relationships, you know, there's so many interventions before you can even pretend to believe you've seen the same thing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So fascinating. I also, so you mentioned this, but I think it'd be fun to dig into it a little bit more. Is this like, is the piece containing the instructions? There's like this way that like the work is self-evidence. It's like a little bit self-contained. What draws you to? You mentioned like other influences, but how have you been drawn to that way of the work existing?
I think it's actually a little bit of pushing back against the explanatory text that, you know, usually accompanies a painting or other kind, like, and not that I'm against historical context, always useful to have that. But I also found that whenever I would go to museums, I would see people looking at the text much longer than looking at the actual work. So this is just it's a little cheat on my part to get people to maybe look at the work a little bit longer but to also be able to have that comprehension too, because I know they're not reading it or they're not concentrating on it because you know, they don't want to look at the art. No, they just want to understand what's going on. And so I'm like, well, I feel like that should be encouraged. I want people to want to understand. So let's just build it in to the work itself. And then you can be looking at the work and hopefully gain a little bit of understanding and maybe even have a little interaction. I think that was the other part that excited me about this was the possibility of making a postcard into a little bit of an interaction without, I mean, because I love mail art anyway, and getting mail is an interaction anyway. I love being able to send and receive mail art. It's a very exciting, I think, way to not only exchange art with other artists, but just to be able to experience art in that way. And a lot of times people get postcards, but there's something fun about being able to play with the form of a postcard and give you something a little extra.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love how it's such a gentle way also to remind people that their minds and bodies are part of filtering and experiencing art, because it's so explicit in your work. It's true for all work, but it's so explicit in yours that I think that's a good reminder or a good
I would hope so. I mean, I know that like your eyes can get such a workout. I know that like I'll go to a museum and you like museum fatigue is real. Like at some point, your eyes stop being able to see things. You're like, I might be looking at the most amazing painting, even something that I've like looked forward to seeing. And if it's been a long day of looking at a lot of other things, my eyes get tired or they just can't quite take it in. So being able to give some sort of relief, a little bit of like, oh, well, I need to engage my body in something other than just the right position to put myself in front of something to look at it. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, those are my questions, but I'm also,
Oh,
is
great.
there anything you're exploring right now that you want to share or things
Oh,
you're getting excited about?
well, I am very excited about getting to play with a very tiny little press that I have that I clamp to the side of my table. And I actually have a YouTube channel where I do some process videos of different things that I'm working on. So I'm very excited about getting to try out 2 colors on this little tiny press. I've done 1 color up to this point, and now I'm going to be adding in 2 colors and seeing what kind of they're probably going to be landscapes, but it'll be landscapes that are arranged according to the easiest way for me to get 2 colors on a page without worrying too much about registration issues. You know, lining stuff up can always be like, oh my gosh, such a pain, but
Yeah.
sort of like a little looser, a little bit more like, yeah, oh no, this totally works, even though it's way off. Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely link people up to your YouTube channel then, because I really enjoy your
Absolutely.
videos. Like it's like it's soothing and interesting to just see all of the different I don't know, it's just very satisfying. So I think you'll
I'm
really enjoy it.
so glad to hear that. I like to be able to create. What I'm hoping with the channel is to just sort of create a little like soothing place to be able to like sort of like, even if you're just playing it in the background, that it's got that low key. Oh, that's how you do that. Or wow, she really messed up horribly there. You know, but in a low key way.
Yes.
Yeah, gently, gently.
Well, we all mess up, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your pieces with us. I'm going to brag and show them again.
Great.
And for talking with us today about them, because I think it's so interesting and really, yeah, really great to have you as part of the series. So thank you so much.
So happy to be a part of it, and this was delightful.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.